Not much of a design happening here at this point, I know, but let's go and grab some design elements. So I'm going to go and open up two project files that we have. So I'm just going to hit Command O, or you can hit Control O if you're on the Windows side. And I want to go and grab a file called Craters, which you should find inside your project files folder. And I'm also going to scroll down and find a file called Web Header. So hold down Control or hold down Command here on the Mac and click on that second file, Web Header, and go ahead and click on Open. And you should get both files now open inside Photoshop in addition to our web layout file. Okay, perfect. Now, essentially what I want to do is I want to take the craters and the web header and I want to drag them into my web layout file. So again, there's lots of different ways to do this. Usually what I do is I head up to this fella here, my Arrange Documents drop-down menu, and I say Float All in Windows. So now I have something like this. And I'm just going to double check that I'm on my Move tool. I am. And I'm going to start off with my web header. I'm just going to click and drag him onto my web layout file. But you know, before I let go of my mouse, here's a neat trick I hope you know about. I'm going to hold down the Shift key before I let go of my mouse. And what that does, by the way, is that drops the file in the dead center of the new document, if that makes sense. So when you're dragging something over into an existing file, hold down Shift, and it'll drop that content in the dead center of the document. Great. All right, now, holding down Shift, I'm going to click and drag straight up because I want this guy in the center of my layout, because I want this guy centered in the middle of my document, but I want him all the way up at the top. So that looks perfect. All right, and now for the craters. I'm going to grab my craters, click and drag, hold down Shift once again before I let go of my mouse. There we go, something like this. All right, let's close out of our craters. Command W or Control W. Same with the header. We can close out of him as well. Control or Command W. Back up to our Arrange Documents drop-down menu, and I will say Consolidate All to give us this type of an interface now. Okay, a few things to work out here. First of all, I'm going to rename my layers so I know what's what inside my layers palette. So I'll rename layer 1. I'll double-click on him, and I'll call him Header. And I'll double-click on layer 2. And I'll call him Craters. Whenever you're double-clicking on your layers, make sure to double-click over top of the text if you want to rename them. Don't double-click over towards the right. That'll get you into your layer styles. Okay, now I'm just going to take the header layer and I'm going to drag him above the Craters layer, something like this. And I'm going to take my Craters and I'm going to do a little free transform on this fella. So make sure your Craters layer is selected and I'll hit Command T or Control T there on the PC side. And holding down Option or Alt and Shift, I'm going to drag from one of the corners and I'm just going to scale this guy out a little bit. Maybe something like that I think looks decent. Go ahead and hit Enter or double click inside the free transform frame to lock in that change. Okay, one last thing that I want to do here before we move on, I want to put a solid black 1 pixel outline or stroke all the way around my header graphic. I'm just going to zoom in a little bit here. And by the way, as you're zooming in on your file, make sure that you don't zoom in closer than 100%. You can see your zoom percentage there down in the bottom left corner. The way that it works when you're building a layout for the web here inside Photoshop is 100% is going to be the size that the layout is going to appear inside a web browser for your site's visitors. So you don't want to zoom in any closer. In fact, you don't want to zoom out any farther than that either, unless you want to get an overall look and feel for your layout. But when you set your zoom to 100%, that's how it's going to look inside the browser. Okay, so I want to go and do this outline around the header. So what I'll do is I'll simply apply a layer style here, double click on the right hand side of my header layer. Into the layer style dialog box, I'm going to turn on stroke. The color's already set to black. I'm going to set the size to just 1 pixel. And I'm going to be sure to set the position now to inside because I want the outline to appear on the inside of the header, if that makes sense. Go ahead and click on OK. Last but not least, if you don't see a black line running across the top of your header, make sure you're on the Move tool and then just tap your down arrow key, maybe once or twice until you see that black outline. Perfect.